Welcome to your lesson on testing. Now don't groan at the word test. I know that word has a lot of baggage, but testing your website is actually really fun, especially this particular lesson, because what we're going to be doing is benchmarking the performance of our website and then watching those numbers go up. And it can actually be really gratifying. So now let me just give you a quick overview of this lesson structure. In the first section, we'll just go through the site and check the functionality of all the different pages. The next part of the lesson focuses on speed. And we're going to use some very clever tests to show us what, if anything, is slowing our site down, and we'll make any quick wins we can in that area. So for Squarespace, the only thing you can really do to speed up your site is to optimize your images, and we will use these tests to show you if there are any images that are excessively large, and I'll show you how to compress them if you need to. For WordPress, there's quite a lot we can do since we can use all kinds of plugins and content distribution networks. So I will show you the 3 steps that give you the most return on investment. So for part 1, I want you to go through each page in your site, unless you have a ton of blog pages, and I want you to click on every link and make sure it's still live. And I want you to fill out and submit every single form. And I want you to also check that any info that is coming through forms is getting to where it needs to be. You would be really surprised how often forms aren't actually working on people's sites and they're trying to get in touch with you. They want to use your services and it's just not working. So please check that, especially WordPress users, since WordPress core updates so often. Sometimes your contact form plugin doesn't stay up to date. And if you have a shop, please go and buy one of each product type. And especially if you're selling digital products or sessions where people would have to book a time slot with you, please make sure that your user can complete the process. You don't want to leave anyone hanging when they're trying to come and take advantage of what you're offering. Now, I know some sites are very, very large, especially people who blog. And if you have a large number of blog posts, and very especially if you are transferring over from another site, you're going to want to use an automated tool to check all of your different links. And this is important for 2 reasons. The first is to inspire confidence in your user that you are actually a fully competent expert and you're taking your web presence seriously. And the other is because Google actually marks you down for broken links. So you will sink through the rankings and the search results if you have a lot of broken links. So let me show you an easy online tool that you can use. This is called the Broken Link Checker. There are lots of different tools like these, but most of them require you to install some software locally. This one is good enough, and you just put in your URL and enter their CAPTCHA. And I find this second option is more useful, but that does take a while. And here it has processed my 7 pages and found no broken links. If your website is brand new and from scratch, it's pretty likely you won't find any, but if you do have a lot of blog posts, you do want to check that. And even if you have been very vigilant about keeping your links up to date, sometimes websites disappear. So this is a great thing to do regularly, especially if you're blogging. Okay, so that is our first step complete. Our second step is to actually measure and optimize our page load time. That is the time it takes for our page to load, both on desktop and mobile. And this again is important for 2 reasons. One is people generally leave if your page doesn't load within 3 seconds on desktop or 5 seconds on mobile. And interestingly, Amazon found one year that if it took its pages 1 second longer to load, they actually lost $1.6 billion in revenue. So people will leave and you will sink in your rankings in Google. They do take into account how long it takes your site to load. So you want to stay on top of that. Now there is an essential difference between Squarespace and WordPress, and it's kind of along the same themes that we covered in our Choosing Your Ideal Platform module. And that is that Squarespace is pretty good out of the box, and there's not much you can tweak to improve its performance. And this is because Squarespace doesn't let you touch the code or install plugins. So this means it's already pretty good and you just have to check one thing and then you're done. Now with WordPress, it's just okay out of the box, especially if you install a few plugins. And that's because WordPress tends to have quite a lot of JavaScript in the header. I'll explain why that's important later. And also because it generally doesn't come with a content delivery network like Squarespace does. And a content delivery network would have cached versions of your web pages all over the world, so they're always close to a user. But that's something that we can set up for free, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. And with WordPress, you have the potential for lots of speed gains in just 3 steps, and I will show you those 3 steps. You could actually geek out on this and work on it for well over a month, but you would get pretty marginal returns. So we'll do the 3 big wins, and then I'll link you to resources if you want to go even further with it. So let me show you the tests. There are 2 tools I like to use. The first is made by Google themselves. It's called Test My Site on Link with Google. I'll link this down below. And I'll just test my Squarespace site first. So here are my results. My mobile friendliness is very high, and this is something you can expect both with Squarespace and with WordPress if you've chosen a high quality theme. It's pretty standard to have mobile friendliness in there. But my speed is not doing too great. Squarespace isn't known for its mobile speed, and there's not a lot you can do to improve it. The main problem with Squarespace's speed is that it loads quite a lot of JavaScript in the header and it doesn't have any option for you to move it to the footer. Squarespace has been promising to look at this for at least a couple of years. They have not announced that they've done anything about it. They may be making incremental improvements, but sometimes when you move JavaScript to the footer, it causes fundamental problems, so I guess they haven't found a good way to do it. But if we go into their detailed analysis, we can see that we would want to be, like I said, moving the JavaScript to the footer. Moving the CSS further down the page would definitely make it load faster, but you're more likely to see unstyled content, especially if you're using a special font. You're more likely to see a flash of the wrong font, and then it goes back to normal. And that's really the only thing that Squarespace is doing wrong at this point, and they are aware of it, so hopefully they'll do something about that in the future. And for my desktop, again, that's the only thing that really needs to change. If you are on WordPress and you want a more detailed analysis than this, then you can have it sent to you. So that's one of the tools. The other tool that's not nearly as pretty, but gives us a lot of information, is GT Metrics. I'll link this down below. And here are my results. I like this because it's very, very detailed. And we can see we do everything really well, except, again, the JavaScript. So if I could do something about that, if I'm in WordPress, then I should definitely do something about that. But Squarespace users just can't. The only thing they can change here is their images. So you scroll down and see how you did on your images. They actually analyze the images that are there and they tell you how much more you could compress them. My images are already optimized. I optimize them in Photoshop, but if you don't use Photoshop and you find that your images are quite large, and by quite large, you really shouldn't be going up above 150K. It's 150 kilobytes. You definitely shouldn't have anything that is megabytes large. If you need to reduce your images, I like tiny JPEG. So you literally just drop them here. And you want to go for a compression level where it's not really distorting anything, but you do want to keep it at below 200K and ideally 100K or less. So if you are a Squarespace user, you are done. Congratulations. You can stop this video. Or you can keep watching if you're just curious. I love curious people. Now we are in the WordPress only section of our lesson, because in WordPress we can configure all sorts of things, and WordPress does kind of need it. They aren't optimized out of the box. So if I go back here to the Think with Google site, they will actually give me a great checklist to go through to make sure I cover everything I need to do to improve my site's load time. So again, because I used a great theme, my site is very mobile friendly. It's not a terrible speed, but it definitely could be improved. And if you notice, it is actually better than the Squarespace site. And my desktop speed is okay. But let's have a look at what we need to do. So I know this keeps coming up, but it is the most important thing. My big problem is I have a ton of JavaScript loading before the page even loads. So the user is just seeing a blank screen. So I want to move whatever JavaScript I can into my footer, but then give my site a good checking, especially if I am using WooCommerce or anything with complicated functionality. So I'll need to go into my WordPress admin dashboard. And if I come down here to plugins, I want to add new. I want to install a plugin called Scripts to Footer. And I can see, again, when you're out evaluating whether to use a plugin, it's highly rated, it's widely installed, and the author is active. And it's compatible with my version of WordPress, which is good because WordPress just updated a couple of days before I recorded this. So I'll activate that. And I don't really need to do anything to it because it's just moving my scripts to my footer. Now, there is a special thing in here that you may need to use. jQuery is an extensive JavaScript library that is used by quite a lot of programmers. And it may be that something needs to load in the main body of your page that relies on jQuery being in the header. So the author of this plugin has actually given you that option that you can move jQuery back into the header. And you can also exclude this plugin from working on any of these pages. So what you want to do is go into your site and have a look at every single page type, and especially your commerce section if you have one. And if it's not working properly anymore, then you can first put jQuery back, see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, then take this back out because that is generally the heaviest thing in your header. And then you can exclude these page types too. So I've already checked my site. I know it works fine with this plugin. So that takes us to step 2, where we can turn on browser caching, which means that the user caches some of the assets that we're using. So they would be caching some of our images and CSS and JavaScript, and also enable compression and optimize images. It is important, and when we were in that earlier test on GTmetrix, you would have seen whether it told you that you needed to optimize images. So if it did tell you, then go do that. If not, you can ignore this. Now, to be able to turn on browser caching and compression, we are going to use another plugin called W3 Total Cache. So again, you would go into Add New and you would search for it up here. Then you would go ahead and install and activate it. And once you have activated it, you get performance here down in your sidebar. And we're going to ignore this message for now. As soon as we have made all our settings, then we can come back and we can follow their directions. So we'll just leave it for now. We'll go into General Settings. And we want to make sure that page cache is enabled and it's on disk enhanced. Minify is enabled, and you want to leave it on manual because that's going to give us a chance to go down here and individually set how we want it to be. These are all good defaults. We're going to leave database cache on and leave this off. So this is the big winner here. We definitely want that enabled. That's one of the best things that this plugin does for us. We're going to ignore the CDN. This is a content delivery network. And the one we use is free and it's integrated into SiteGround hosting. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not actually listed here. So we'll leave all of that blank. We don't want reverse proxy. This is super useful, but you'll need to go back into your Google console and get an API key. I should also mention that in each section, if you change something, you want to click the Save All Settings button in that. So now that we've gotten to the bottom of this page, I want you to go back up and I want you to empty the page cache. Purge your SiteGround cache if you're using SiteGround. And then go to your website, and if you already have it open, I want you to hold down the Shift key while you refresh. And now just have a quick look on each of your page types to make sure you have not broken anything. If you have, now is the time to debug. The reason we do these checks in between is because if you do have to fix a bug, it makes it much easier to isolate the cause of that bug, which is more than half the battle. So now we can go back into our WordPress dashboard, and we're going to go down to Minify. We do want rewrite URL structure turned on. This does give us a speed boost. And we want to enable HTML Minify settings, and we want inline CSS and inline JavaScript minification. Minification just means that instead of our style sheet and JavaScripts being laid out all pretty and easy to read, they're actually smushed up onto one line. It makes it a much smaller file size. So make sure all of those are turned on. If they weren't turned on already, you want to hit Save All Settings. And down here in the JavaScript section, this is the most important for our speed boost, is you want to enable the Minify, and you want to choose non-blocking using async. That's short for asynchronous. What this means is the browser's not going to let the downloading of the JavaScript block the downloading and parsing of the HTML. Instead, it's just going to look for a good time to download the JavaScript that's not going to interfere with the loading of the page. You could possibly also use defer, but this could cause problems if you are using Google Analytics and you don't want to mess up your tracking. So I recommend using async. So you want to do that for anything that is in your head tag and anything that's between your body tags. If the JavaScript comes after the body, then it's not blocking anything, so it's not something you need to worry about. So you're going to want to save all settings there if you've changed anything. And then we can come down to the CSS. We do want to enable minifying our CSS. And it's good to combine your CSS, but again, you want to check really carefully before you do that. So you're going to want to save all settings there. And because this is the biggest change we are making, again, we want to empty our cache and purge our SiteGround cache and shift reload our site. And again, check every page type. So we'll go back in and we'll go down to CSS now. We want to enable the minifying of CSS, and we do want to combine. And down here, you're going to want to enter the file path for each style sheet you have. And the way you can get those is if you just have a look at the source and you look for every style sheet. So you can see it starts up here. So I can copy the link address. And I would go back in here and I'd put it in, and I'm going to delete everything that is in front of that WP content. And I'm going to want to make sure that's a real working link. It is. And then I would go back and I would look for all of them. They're mostly here. If you're having trouble reading this, you can actually just search and just use Control F, and you can just write in style sheet. Or even better, you could say CSS. And then it's going to show you, every time you click on it, where the next CSS is. But if you see that it has JS in it, then ignore it. But they're mostly down here. So again, once you've done that, you want to save it. And you want to purge. It will remind you. You want to empty all your cache. And purge. And then shift refresh and cross your fingers that you didn't break anything. CSS is very important. You can see that that took a little longer to load because I have deprioritized its loading. This is a little module pulled in by JavaScript, but that is definitely the least important thing on my page. So that's a good thing. I consider that a feature. So you want to go again, especially if you're selling anything, to check all your page types. And don't worry, we're almost done. I don't want to lose you. These we can leave as is. If this has actually broken some of your pages, you can put in some exclusions in here, especially the JavaScript and CSS. And now the last one we need to go to is down to browser cache. And we want to enable most of these. Want to make sure we've set our last modified header, we've set our expires header, we've set our cache control header, we've set our e tag. We can skip this one. And this is that third recommendation from Google, enable compression. So you definitely need to have that enabled. And the rest are fine. Go ahead and save all your settings. And again, we want to enable the same things that we enabled above. And the defaults on here are pretty good. So that is it for our settings in W3 Total Cache. I want to purge once more. And now we are on to step 3. Step 3 is setting up our content delivery network. And what that's going to do is take a snapshot of each of our pages and have a cached version on servers all over the world. And it's really amazing that you can get that for free these days. So let's take advantage of that. The one I recommend is called Cloudflare, and their free version is pretty good. If you want to get even faster, then you can certainly sign up for their paid for service, but your gains are pretty good with just the free version. So if you're not using SiteGround hosting, then you're going to want to do everything through here and follow their tutorials. If you are using SiteGround hosting, you can log into your SiteGround account, go into My Accounts, cPanel, and then you're going to come down here under Site Improvement Tools. Now while we're in here, we're just going to take advantage of some things SiteGround offers for free. Doesn't help us a lot, but it's free and we're here, so we'll just turn it on. You want to turn on level 1 cache just down here. And if you are on one of the higher paid plans, I'm on the mid-level plan, Grow Big, I can turn on levels 2 and levels 3. But again, that's not the big one. The big one is Cloudflare. So if I click on the Cloudflare icon, I see my list of domains here and I can just activate it. And this is coming up again. I need to make sure www is set up. And I can check that or not. I know that it's working, so I'm not going to check it. So there it is. If I go into manage, I can see that it is working fine. And after you've had it live for a while, you can see how much of the traffic is actually going through their servers and how much is going through yours. Mine's a little low right now because I turned it off so I could show you in this tutorial how to turn it on. And you'll want to make sure under settings that you have it set to aggressive so you can get as much caching as they'll offer you. But every once in a while you'll be making changes on your website, so you want to go ahead and purge that cache so that you are telling them to come and get a fresh version from your site. Your site will be a little slower to load for a little while, but it'll be a more updated version of your site. And I've already minified my JavaScript and CSS in W3 Total Cache, but I can also do that here. Now I'm going to show you the super powerful way to make your site really fast. So you're going to want to go to cloudflare.com and log in. So it's a little bit weird because they've created an account for you, but they haven't given you a password. So the first time you do it, you'll need to actually go through the forgot your password rigmarole so you can actually create a password. And then come back and log in. And you're going to want to go to page rules. Now on the free plan, you are allowed to set up to 3 rules. So I'm going to show you 2 very important rules to create that will speed up your site even more. The first one is for them to not screw up your WordPress dashboard, because if they're creating cached copies and serving them to you of your dashboard, then it will intermittently look to you like you haven't made your changes, and it can get really confusing. So the very first thing you want to say is, don't cache my dashboard. And the way you do that is you do an asterisk. So whether you put your www in there or not, doesn't matter. So this is an asterisk is kind of a wild card. So it's at anything, and then your domain name /wp dash, and then actually I want to make that admin so that it is caching my WP includes or content. So do not cache any URL that starts with this. So we're going to say cache level, just bypass it. Just do not cache it. And the next awesome rule is, and there's a reason I'm doing them in this order, is cache everything. Cache every little bit of my page so that I can be served up super fast. So I'm going to say anything that comes before my domain name / anything. So I'm doing, again, cache level and then cache everything. So these 2 rules will work in tandem, and this would be a valid exception. And now I'm just going to show you the other bit that you need to know about when you want to send out a fresh copy of your site to the world. And this is especially important when you are making changes and you want to check that they're working and maybe they're not showing up for you and you don't know why. You would come up here to caching, and down here this is drop down actually, and you would say purge everything, which they make kind of a big deal of it, but it's not that big a deal. It just slows down your site for a few minutes. So that's one place to purge it. If you happen to have your cPanel open, you can actually do it in here. So now that we have done all that, the content delivery network is going to take a while to get a copy of all the pages on our site and propagate them to the servers around the world. So we might not see those speed gains quite yet, but we can compare ourselves to the benchmark now. And we can see that we've gone up to 75. Now that might not seem like a huge gain for 20 minutes of work, but it's actually making us much faster than our competition. So that is something we should be proud of. So now if I go back to G2 metrics and I analyze my site speed, I can see that I've gotten my page load time down to 1.7 seconds, and I forgot to record my original, but it was actually 4.2 seconds. So I've cut my page load time down by far more than half. There are still things I can improve, however. For example, this file right here is a link to jQuery, and it is redundant. So something in my page is calling jQuery, but it's pretty buried, and I'm going to need to go look through the actual code to find it. So that is out of the scope of this tutorial. If you are brave and you know WordPress, then you could go digging, or you could also hire a developer. But overall, this is pretty darn fast. I am very happy with what just those 3 steps did for my page performance. So there you have it. Now you have a website that is optimized by speed, which means Google will love you and your visitors won't leave and they will have more confidence in you. All right, that's the end of this tutorial.